Starting lineup: Teemo, Zed, Mel, Fortune, Lux up against Yorick, Yi, Xerath, Tristana, Seraphine. Rating of the picks for a lower ranked game: Teemo as a top 4, Mel as a mid 8, Fortune as a shooter 8, Lux in support 6, Yorick as a top 10, Yi in the jungle 5, Xerath as a mid. We're gonna bump Xerath up from an 8 to a 9 for the lower ranked. So that's a 9 for Xerath. Tristana as a shooter 10, Seraphine in support 8. With this game finally introducing Zed to the channel, the wait has been too long, and almost poetic justice that immediately we happened for our first game on this group, where the bitterness of talking about my problem with alts happens upon a lot of relief and a lot of nuance when we bear witness to these two individuals in this Yi player and this Tristana player who are the complete opposite of me and have literally invested all of their time and money into a single champ and a single playstyle. Both players have exceedingly high mastery on these champs, higher mastery than I, with my many alts, have on any of my champs, and yet things may not be as they seem, and in fact, some veteran players may end up being outdone by somebody like me who is just getting to know their own character. Because yeah, it is possible to avoid wasting a bunch of time on alts or alternative playstyles. When you really commit and bear down, you have a stronger personal brand and you really become synonymous with that champion, much like this Yi player. But what are you actually tying yourself to? In this case, perhaps you need to make numerous alts before you actually can have real authority to make this kind of commitment and to make this kind of judgment call. To put all of your eggs in one basket. That is the other end of the paradox and the flip side of being pointed at and laughed at for being obsessed with alts. Which is to say, what did you really know about the game when you decided that this was going to be the one? And in all likelihood, the answer could not be farther apart between me and this Yi player. Moving on. Taking a look at this collection of dressed up dolls and Tristana. You're using double up too soon and you're too greedy in the situation, acting like you already have a crit item for that spell damage in your kit. But it's so early in game and you don't have anything like that. You end up dying to the anticipation of thinking that you got the kill. I have this constant bullying from Seraphine, such an absolute nightmare if you don't do anything about spell resist. And then at 4 minutes and 37 seconds in, what we get is the sheer amount of experience of this Tristana player paying off. This Seraphine player depleting her mana all of the time, and really a loose cannon. You have Lux dramatically missing with that root, so painful when it only hits the minions. Really an ability that requires you to constantly be mindful of what is clogging up that lane. Tristana is a highly mobile marksman who excels at scaling damage, and the reason why you don't see Tristana that much at Worlds, etc. is because of the fact that she doesn't have great team fight spells, 5-on-5 all-out spells, do a lot of AoE. You could make an argument that she is the best marksman for all the lower levels of play, where teams don't stick together and there aren't that many teams team fights. If team fights were out of the question, every single pro game would have Tristana in it. And throughout the rest of the game, irrational behavior from both this Fortune player and this Tristana player. Shooters seem to have a very rough time, emotionally speaking. It's such a great way to empower feminism and masculine women, putting monsters like Tristana in the game like that. An absolute strategical gem, just very hard on the eyes. And if you have to look at that every night for the rest of your life, you have to really wonder whether it is worth the visual sacrifice. Drake time, jungle objective time. We have this Tristana manhandling and abusing the ping button. It is remarkable how many League players have good mechanical control. Virtually every single Xerath ultimate snipe that I've ever seen attempted resulted in kills. I do not know of a good way to counter it. You have Tristana who's being pulled in because she wants to snipe and kill steal from the Xerath trying to kill me. She ends up going in too deep and dying. Mutual destruction with the smell. Yi sticks to the Drake. Smite is massive in jungle objectives. The blue team is handicapped now. And this Fortune player could have certainly positioned herself better, closer to this Lux player, which would have made it much easier to coordinate without fear. It's pretty wild to me that in a bottom-of-the-barrel game like this, 8 out of the 10 players are constantly involved in jungle objective fights. I'm really not used to everybody actively partaking. This is one of the rare instances where the mid laner actually takes up their roaming responsibilities. And you have to give it to this Mel player, an arrogant guy, a kill sniping guy, a self-glorifying guy, but absolutely excellent play here. This is as much of a contribution as you can make. This team is really willing to do anything to get their buff and to help their jungler out. And we're going to later on see this Yi player being abusive toward this Xerath player. And with that, you kind of have to wonder what he's used to. Because I'm a jungler main, and most of my experiences have been on champs who had to go after the Drake, and the times that I've gotten assistance from the mid lane like this, like you're having a complete literal artillery barrage here from this Xerath player, he's going to end up repeating that as well, using his ultimate around the objective again, which you could make an argument for is a very good usage of the spell power that he has and the cooldown, but this is certainly not common by any means. In the vast majority of games, you're gonna have far less involvement from the mid lane than this. Certainly not getting a complete batch of supporting fire. You have the Seraphine player bizarrely, suddenly saving a lot of mana. And with this Ghost Flash combo, you have to suspect an old person. And you see so much sidestepping and random spinning and going back and forth and going back and forth from this Yi. All these movements with so little outcome and so little result. The aftermath of the Drake fight, this Fortune player kicking herself because she's not using Make It Rain, Tristana ends up running into my arms. Not the greatest beauty, but I'll take it. You have that laser from Lux, and you could very easily help yourself in the situation if you're Tristana and get Wit's End. It fits perfectly. We end up ambushing this Seraphine player because this team has a lot of natural cohesion. You get one of the top 10 dumbest plays that we've ever seen on the channel as this max life, totally fine Tristana player with crazy experience launches herself directly in the middle of Mel, Fortune, and Lux, who devour her in about a split second. This is one of those things that I will end up suffering from progressively less, which is the apologetic death. You know that your ally is about to die. You're all in your comms and you're all in your pings and you're looking at everything that is being said and you're so afraid that this person will lash out at you and say something like, "Aw, Tristana, why did you leave me to die? Aw, Tristana, I'm so mad, sad face," that you just throw yourself into death and suicide so that you can say, "Well, it wasn't my fault. Look at me, I'm dead." When I was 18 years old, I used to do that kind of thing a lot. Most people do it to some degree. You will see me throughout the development of this channel do this less and less myself. This bottom lane to a large degree just being used as a feeding ground. This Yi nowhere to be seen. Never gets called out on it, never thinks about it either. This Yi will proceed to call everybody else out for every single thing, but he himself never did a thing. And then from a strategical standpoint, in terms of pure game balance, Yi is a character with some self-healing and sustain, and the ability to go berserk for a while. That is his power. In addition to confusing very new players with his first spell where he briefly disappears. But that does not apply here, the first spell Confusion, because these are not very new players, so it doesn't work on them. But the point is, if you are going to do anything strategically with Yi, now would be the time. If he's any use at all, it would be as a kind of bruiser in this situation to help Seraphine. Because he's not going to be a hyper-mobile assassin, right? He's also not going to be a mysterious mind-effer like Shaco, right? He's also not going to be a sniper like Caitlyn, right? If you're going to strategically use him for anything, it would be for this kind of thing. And yet, he is nowhere to be seen. Getting hit in the same exact spot over and over and over again with the Serath ability. I do what Warwick cannot do, and I shadow clone myself out of the Drake Shrine. We have this Yi doing a very deep thing and just standing in the bushes, then getting shot. We're chasing down Zerath, who finally made a mistake, end up going after Atakan. We have this deep penetration from Yi, Seraphine, and Yorick, which we're going to end up cleaning up. We have Yorick's mistress on Mel. We have Lux using her ultimate on Yorick. We have me using my ultimate on Yi, and then Mel going in for the kill steal. We experience the role of Atakan, top lane inner turret area, and this clip with Teemo and Fortune. Such an amazing depiction of the function of Atakan making dumb plays smart, that is precisely what it does. The moment you get that double life for those 2 minutes, you should absolutely rush to opportunity. It's a beautiful thing, a moment where you can consider yourself immortal and just try stuff out. An absolute nightmare to go up against when the other team has it. The biggest losers with Atakan are the ones who get the double life and then end up never using it. You want to avoid doing that. You should almost try to die once you have the Atakan buff. For some reason with this Zerat barrage, he did not follow up and go after Mel consistently. Fortune, I can surprise nobody by commenting on Bullet Time, probably the most famous ability in the game. Yeah, we get a little bit of an escapade with Zerath. In my top 3 of things I do not understand about League players and community is the running off to Narnia thing. And anybody who ever sees me do it, please call me out on it. That this never happens to me in any of my clips, in any of my videos at any point at any game. Because why on earth would you run randomly into the jungle like this Zerat player when you can just simply get back to your turret? Yeah, you get the apologetic death from the Seraphine player who ends up following this Yi who at max life dives in, this gank at 22 minutes in. This Yi person, seemingly an old man, very little brain power. There is absolutely nothing there. There's absolutely no play to be made. That is a straight up suicide. We have seen 2 truly uniquely stupid plays in this review. The first one being Tristana jumping in front of 3 people, and the second one being Yi at max life jumping at 4 people. Some unbelievable behavior from people who have over 100 mastery. We have the takedown of this turret, and the continuation of the last play. Yi is finally going to get a kill, but it's not going to count. We have this Mel whittling down Tristana, and here we go again with the master strategy. This Yi player is going to come from behind. What have I said? Coming from behind doesn't do a damn thing. We're not playing Prince of Persia, we're not playing Assassin's Creed. We find this Yi jungling here. He's gonna get zapped in 2 hits. This is a kill steal by Mel. Yi is going to cry in ping and in chat. We have this Tristana player doing the Yi thing because everybody's a master strategist and we know the strategies and we come from behind. We have this exchange here, 3-on-3 initially, where I'm trying to take minimum damage. We're gonna have Tristana commenting that Yorick is missing, and she is somehow going to become enraged at this Yorick player who seems to me the only somewhat normal individual from Protest going to join him in pushing the top lane and the breakdown of all the defenses of the red team. There's way too many people pushing down there. You can afford only 1 Guerrilla as the red team. Later on we have Fortune bringing down this turret, and a retreat is then suddenly called, which is one of the most abrupt changes that we've ever seen, seemingly called by this Aquarius. We get the inescapable ultimate from Zerath. I have to grudgingly admit, for the lower tiers, Zerath has one of the best ultimates in the game. It's a very childish spell, but it's a very effective one. We're gonna have me saying, WTF are you doing here at the Drake? The enemies are all dead. And there's like 1 turret left. Why on earth are 5 of you coming down here to the Drake? And it's really worth noting that as I myself am slowly becoming a veteran player, I have seen a lot of the problems and question marks throughout my real life seen solidified in League of Legends, in terms of the pointless anger, the sheep-like mentality, and the cult-like thinking. Even though we're all now against Jesus Christ, you're actually bigger cult thinkers than any Christian ever was. Because all of this just makes it very, very clear that you haven't the faintest idea what the dragon buff actually does. Because if you had any idea why we actually go to the dragon, why we actually go to the baron, why we actually go to the grubs, why we actually go to the herald, you clearly would not be here right now. The fact that these 5 people decide to all cancel the defeat of the enemy team in favor of this completely meaningless buff at this point in the game solidifies what we've been thinking all along, all this time, and the strange let-ups and the unveiling that started many months ago, where it already seemed suspicious that certain people were always throwing temper tantrums about jungle objectives. And now it is with this indeed become very clear that a lot of these groups have not the faintest idea what they're actually doing with these buffs and with these objectives, and are, as I suspected all along, just simply act because of the looks or because of the group pressure, but never because they actually know what they're doing. Let's take a look at this game. Let's take a look at the individuals in this game. Let's take a look at how they interacted with each other. We have the Teemo player, antisocial, but I already said that, right? I said Teemo player, antisocial, and Teemo player, they're the same thing, right? So we have this antisocial player, who's being Teemo. We have this Teemo player, who's being antisocial. Teemo in ranked is always a curse. Teemo is the polar opposite of Cho'Gath. Every time in ranked, when you see Cho'Gath, you think, okay, that increases our win chances by 20%. Every time you see Teemo, you go like, okay, I hope that guy is on the enemy team. And if he's on your team, you go, okay, I hope that this group disbands before the game gets made. We have myself, first game on Zed, a victory, a slow start for me, as I'm planning to try many items out on this champ. I went 3-1-6, certainly Mel stole at the very least 3 kills from me. I mean, what can I say, first impressions? I have always seen Zed as Talon's big brother because of the fact that Talon was my first real champ. I've always found it incredibly bizarre that Zed has never been used in more flexible positions. I've never understood it. I've noticed that everyone agreed on never using Zed in a flexible position. Never questioned the wisdom up until now. What I see from Zed, endless outplay potential. A well-played Zed can save a lot of deaths because you can always get away. Visually, the most appealing and good-looking character I've ever played. When Warwick can go in 2 directions, Zed could go quite literally with Death's Mark 8 or 9 different directions, and you never know where he is. The fact that he has this kind of farm speed with the Shadow Clone, that he obviously can hop over any hedge and any wall with his second spell, which gives him insane flexibility and mobility in the jungle. How is it that we out of 100 junglers have 70 Warwicks and 0 Zeds? How can that ever be right, given what I'm seeing here now? We have this Mel player, kill stealer, self-aggrandizing, but very skilled, good, composed player. Definitely an asset to many teams. I love the fact that this person was constantly roaming in a very efficient manner, constantly helping out left and right. This player could really feel like your personal assistant at times, which just adds so much to team cohesion. This player ended up going 11-1, if I remember correctly. We have this Fortune player, most likely the worst player on the blue team, and needless to say, the one who is all over the pings, because if you cannot play, at least you can ping. We had very recently Trundle episode 5, the Triane fortune player from Trundle episode 5, and the Aquarius fortune player from Zed episode 1 right here are really the same person. The problem is the exact same thing. You believe that dying does not matter, and that is very clear in everything that you do. You appear to be drinking as well. We have this Lux player, probably the best player all around, if we're being honest. Quite a boring story of just endless self-improvement through never playing another character in your life and just purely perfecting this Lux. You're using a very dangerous build that the online guides are very keen to recommend that works on almost no one. Perhaps you used this build so many times until you finally learned how to play like this, but I imagine that you fell flat on your face a million times before because you don't have a single sustain item in your kit, you have nearly no mana items in your kit, you have no health items in your kit, so in other words, it is just one big ability power bomb. And yeah, that is good looking right now that you've mastered it, but if these enemy players were any better, then you would be in serious trouble with this kind of build. We have this Yorick player, the most desirable player from the red team. He was the most consistent enemy and the most strategically sound red player. Then we have this Yi. You went 0-7-0. That last 0 is really the defining one in terms of who you were in this game. Because it's possible, theoretically speaking, that you didn't get an opportunity to make a real kill. But it is much less credible that if you had tried, you couldn't get one assist. Really? In all this time, you couldn't get a single assist. And you have the audacity to open your mouth to other people. You have the audacity to constantly be pinging and spamming surrender. Really. And from everything that we can tell, this is, and I'm obligated when I'm crafting these videos to make assumptions. If I never made an assumption, there would be nothing to talk about. Based on everything that we're seeing, you seem to be an older man, and you're going 0-7-0, and then verbally attacking other people. We have this Zerat player who was an opportunist more than anything. This Zerat player was a positive influence on the gold balance for Team Red. He went 5-2. He was a significant force from a personal KDA standpoint. However, you could have done a lot more and tried to push a lane at some point. If you play for your own KDA, even though you're playing with losers, you will never get out of Iron. I'm trying really hard to tell myself that as well. I am somewhat in the position of this Zerat player. I frequently have a good personal score, but I end up playing with losers, and instead of trying my hardest to win with a bunch of losers, which is what I should be doing, instead, I'm getting too caught up in my own KDA. Which is something that I should work on, much like the Zerat player. I would say the Zerat player is the second best player on their team, though stat-wise he is by far the best player on Team Red. But this Yorick really was more of an enemy in terms of actually contributing to the game objectives. We have this Tristana player who sent probably as many pings as everybody else combined. This Tristana player ended up landing on the idea that this Yorick player more than anybody should be blamed for the 32-7 situation that they were in. Just no emotional control whatsoever. Very frightening to see that you can have over 100 mastery, play one of the most godly champions in the game, and yet somehow be an absolute punching bag. It goes to show you, sticking with something and loyalty isn't everything either. I'm always beating myself up over it, but here we see, 100 mastery Yi, 100 mastery Tristana, complete clown show. Then we have this Seraphine player. You seem to be inebriated. You were very chatty at the beginning of the game, and were then one of the first people who seemingly wanted to surrender, as you very quickly grew completely tired of this bunch. And it was all a fun party at the beginning for the Seraphine player, but the mood changed very quickly. This is one of those games as well, when you're really getting pummeled and pounded more than anything, you really feel that that support slot should be a Leona, should be a Rell. When you do not go along with the tankier types and the recommended 10 out of 10 support meta, you see the downside to it in a game like this where you get utterly pummeled. This was a one-sided affair, of course, with a great Lux player and a great Mel player. It is very fortunate that we got to experiment with Zed in this kind of environment, and that we had a smooth start to this long journey. Taking a look at the scoreboard here, let's look at the player with the best outcome. That would be this Lux player, and this is just, I can already tell at first glance, this is what every online guide would tell you. It is as cookie cutter as it could possibly get, without any nuance or any kind of deviation, a complete copy-paste. This takes still a lot of skill. Been playing the same champion for multiple years without any kind of deviation. This is pure habit. Let's have a look at the worst player here. The worst player was this Fortune player, because many of you would perhaps say that it is Teemo, but remember everything that we said about handing the enemy a bunch of money. This is actually a very bad number in this context. It means that you were literally the only person who was handing the enemy money. And I can guarantee you, if you look at this person's personal record, you would see that they do atrociously and that they usually play on the losing side. That is because you can tell that this person does not comprehend the gold mechanism. It is everything that I talked about in Trundle 5 all over again. I'm not going to describe it all over again. But dying is very bad. And what we have here, whenever people stack this life leech on top of each other, my dude, you do know that the leech does not go off when you use bullet time, right? You do realize that the leech does not go off when you use Make It Rain, right? You do realize that the leech does not go off when you use your first spell, right? This is literally purely only on auto attacks. Who and what do you think you are? Dracula? Like, what do you think you're doing here? Like, why would you think that you should put every penny into leeching life? And same story as forever. What keeps people alive is 4 things. Number 1, being smart, your brain. Number 2, armor. Number 3, magic resist. Number 4, health. This kind of stuff, leave me a comment or give me a call when you've ever met a person that has no debts or little debts that has a bunch of this stuff on it. It doesn't effing work. Now, of course, does it do something? Surely it does something, yeah. You can most definitely use these items to keep you up if you already have a bunch of tankiness and if you're already an enduring warrior or fighter, most definitely this will help. It also gives you excellent raw damage. But then again, that raw damage is typically also worse for spells, such as bullet time. For example, the shuriken that I throw, they will go up with crit chance, but they will not go up with raw damage. Moving on,